Hi, Changemakers. Welcome to or welcome back to How to Change the World, the podcast that gives you the tools, inspiration, and tips that you need to drive meaningful impact. I am your host, Catherine Alonzo, and today is going to be an absolute joy because I am being joined by my colleague and also one of my closest friends, Alana Campbell Nehl. Alana, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Before we jump in, I want to tell a story of how you and I came to work together. And this is something that I've blogged about for Javelina in the past, and I actually just wrote a story about this on my LinkedIn page. So if you're listening to this, you may have heard it. Alana has been working with us for 9 years and change. So 9 years ago-ish, I knew that we needed a new team member. And this was the first time Javelina was growing. And it was the first time that we had hired somebody that the job was not being covered by client income. It was somebody that was really going to be more operational. And so it was high stakes for us. It was kind of a scary step. And I knew I wanted somebody really specific. I knew that I needed somebody who was very organizational. This person was going to be helping me with my calendar, but also someone who was going to help us build systems within Javelina. And I didn't really know anything about that. So I needed a self-starter. I needed somebody who was really kind of obsessed with organization and efficiency. And I also knew that we weren't offering a super competitive salary, and that what I wanted was somebody with experience who maybe would be coming from the private sector, who was willing to take either a pay cut or a lateral pay move because they were excited about our mission and for working with organizations that are changing the world. And I knew that if I wrote kind of a standard boring job description, that I was unlikely to find the person that I was looking for. And so I was traveling to the UK to visit my family, and I woke up at like 3 a.m. and realized, if I'm looking for a unicorn, then I have to write a unicorn job posting. And I wrote a job posting that was written with this human being in mind, this very specific person. And I emphasized the things that they would be interested in. I addressed the challenges that I thought that they might have or the concerns about the job. And I had in my mind this hypothetical perfect candidate. And I wrote the job description that I thought they would be excited about. And lo and behold, we had, I think, a lot of great candidates. But going through the process, one really emerged as truly the person that I had been imagining. And that was Alana. And that was getting on for 10 years ago now. And Alana has done a lot of different jobs at Javelina, and now serves as our director of client services, but also has built the most, if not all, of the systems and the processes that our entire company is built on. So Alana, I love telling that story because it's just a great meet cute for you and me. But from your point of view, like, what do you remember about that process?
Yeah, so what I remember actually started a little bit before I saw the job posting. So I had been at my previous company for 7 years, I think, at that point, and was ready for something new, something different. I had started a year or two before volunteering with a fantastic organization, Young Nonprofit Professionals Network, and really got to connect with more young professionals working in the nonprofit space. And I knew that the organization I was working for wasn't where I wanted to be in my next step. And I wanted to be more closely connected to the active change making. And that showed up for me actually in a staff meeting where we were asked what about our current jobs were we like really passionate about. And it was in the meeting and event space, and there were lots of things that I really liked about it. But I realized that one of the things that I loved most and got the most value out of in that role was bringing visitors to the state so those dollars would go back into our economy and help our schools, our roads, our infrastructure, lessen the burden of taxpayers, believe it or not. And it was just like above and beyond this idea of hosting meetings, and that I realized that it was the change in the communities that was really driving my passion for the work. And so as time went on, I realized that I was ready to kind of make the next step to do that more actively in my day-to-day role. So it was through a connection, a young nonprofit professionals network, that I happened to share this like experience of mine, this realization. And he said to me, "This is interesting. I just saw the wildest job posting from my friend Catherine Alonzo at Javelina. Um, that kind of sounds like what you're looking for with your operations background, systems creation, process improvement." He was like, "I'll forward it to you and take a look." And I saw that job posting and I was like, I love spreadsheets. I love them so much. Like, give me anything to put into a spreadsheet and I am happy. And the rest is history. A decade of history now.
A decade of history. Isn't that wild? When we were celebrating you a few weeks ago for your 9-year, I was like, oh my gosh, how do I have a company that's old enough to have an employee that's been with us for 10 years?
I know. You could say a decade ago.
Yes, I know. It's insane. And the other reason that we were celebrating you recently is that you have been recognized as one of the Phoenix Business Journal's 40 under 40. So congratulations to you. It's an incredible honor. But if someone met you for the first time, Alana, how would you describe yourself beyond your job title? Let's start there. What kind of person are you? Who are you? And what do you care about the most?
Well, I am a Arizona native. I am a daughter and a sister and a friend, a colleague. I am a wife and a mother to a really cute, almost 2-year-old. I'm also a recovering perfectionist, a mental health advocate, a clarity creator, chaos organizer, a lover of decorative pillows and flower arranging, and overall, a person who loves people.
I can attest to all of those, but I do have a follow-up about the recovering perfectionist. Are you a recovering perfectionist or are you just a perfectionist?
I am a perfectionist who is actively working on not letting it get in the way. I realize, for those who have read or been around some of Brene Brown's work, this idea of like it being about other people, like doing things for the approval of other people, the acceptance of other people, really moving away from that. And I think being in my 30s has helped too. But yeah, don't get me wrong. I love things pretty. I love things orderly. I love clarity and structure. But this idea of it, what it can unlock for people versus how does it like impress people or whatever, like what can it unlock for individuals? So that's why I like to say I'm a recovering perfectionist.
And your job at Javelina today is the Director of Client Services. Tell me a little bit about what that means.
We at Javelina talk a lot about, and in client services, talk a lot about our definition of excellence. And we see that as operationally, creatively, and relationally. And my role as the Director of Client Services is the intersection of all of those things. And is our team and our project teams best positioned to deliver this kind of excellence in all three of those categories? And so there's this constant kind of iterating and improving. So how we deliver creative excellence is certainly different than ways that we deliver operational excellence, right? Where that's the timeline and the budget and tasks and duties, and our creative staff need the time and space for that creative thinking. And so I look at our project managers as the ones who are keeping their eyes on those details, keeping the things on track. because that then unlocks and allows our creative staff the time and space to do
Mm.
their creative work. So when we have a plan, we've got a reasonable timeline laid out, and someone is managing those pieces. Our creative staff then have that time and space to focus on what they are best at. So we are delivering the best possible product for all of our clients. And then that relational piece, all of our team members have have a role in that, but how the experience feels for the customer. Do they feel supported? Do they feel heard and understood? Do we speak the language of their sector industry? And that is so important, and that every single team member is responsible for that. So my role is really to just make sure our staff have the tools and resources and skills to be able to deliver excellence in all of those areas. And when they don't, what do we need to do to make that happen?
Yeah. And I think it comes across in your answer, Lana, is that you're a systems person. I think that you see the world through systems and you see your role through systems. People often picture changemakers as visionaries or activists. And you have built your career and our company around creating systems, processes, and clarity behind the scenes. Why do you think those roles are important, and why do they get overlooked when we're thinking about driving impact in the world?
So I think that every human has the ability to make change in whatever area they seek to make that change. And I think the desire matters. You need to have the desire to make a change, and resources, and those can look all kinds of ways. But as you're talking about, sometimes the behind the scenes, like skills, right? Not always the visionary. We think of like the visionaries and the advocates as those like real change makers. And when we think about systems, systems are a collection of the processes and policies, the structures and framework that people exist in, the people, and the culture and incentives around that. And so all of those things together are how we operate through the world. And we either do that intentionally or unintentionally. So no matter what, we're all operating within systems. They are human made, man made, and we get to decide if we're going to be intentional about them or not. And so when I say that anyone can make change in their areas, and again, don't just have to be the visionary people, you can plug in to the spaces that aren't working anymore. So, aren't working for you, aren't working for your family. And you can use your natural talents and gifts for doing that. So, for me, creating clarity, I think a lot of tension and frustration, particularly in the workplace, comes out when there's just a lack of clarity. What's the objective? How are we going to get there? Are we all rowing in the same direction? Are we clear on roles? Those types of things take intention to figure out, but that lack of clarity is what creates the tension. And so many problems in the workplace are because of a lack of clarity and a lack of process. People don't know what the other person is doing or how we get there. And so when you have people that just have a natural talent for organizing the chaotic, it makes doing the work easier, more collaborative, really leaning into each other's strengths. And so I think in that way, you don't have to work in the nonprofit space. You don't have to be a self-described visionary, but you can make change at home, in your workplace, in your communities, by looking at kind of what isn't working or what do you want to change, having that desire. What skills do you have that you can bring to impact that change, and then taking the action?
Yeah. Alana, one thing I admire about you is that when something goes really horribly wrong, which, happens when you're working in social impact, you rarely panic. Like, I've just never seen you I don't think I've ever seen you sort of in a tailspin because of something that goes wrong for a client or in the course of our work. And you seem to me to have this sort of very repeatable process for tackling challenges. Am I right? And then if so, can you walk me through what goes on in your brain when something goes wrong?
Yeah. Well, first I do panic. I do panic. Um, And I think a story that helps describe this is several years ago, I was working on a project and I had just transitioned to managing this account. And we were working on a printed deliverable for design marketing piece. And it was excellent. The piece was fantastic. And we got it out the door. The client was happy. Everybody signed off and went to the printer. And then I get a phone call that the phone number is wrong. The area code was wrong. And dagger to my heart. And it was so painful. And just in that moment, I panicked. Like, how did I let this happen? Who made the mistake? Whose fault is this? How are we going to make it right? All these things. And then I took a breath and remembered that I don't solve problems well when I'm frantic.
Who does? Right? Like, no one's ever like, I need to work myself up into a tailspin to do my best work, like nobody. Yeah.
Yeah. And so to answer your question about what is my process? So first is let myself panic for a second, like feel, and I notice it. And that is actually my trigger, is noticing in my body that I'm panicking. Just doing that first check in with myself, recognizing it. And then I take a breath or many and remind myself that I'm not able to problem solve when I'm frantic. So just like get myself more regulated. Then I ask myself, and this is really important, especially for managers, is this my problem to solve? And as someone who feels a lot of responsibility for too many things and many things that aren't my responsibility, that has been a really important question for me. So if it's not my problem or challenge or thing to solve, I pass it along to the right person. And maybe there is this like offering of support, sharing insights, but that is like a very important piece. Then if it is my challenge or problem to solve, I repeat the mantra, this is just a problem to solve. Just a problem to solve. And then I spend some time getting clear on what is the root problem. And so usually that takes me in two different directions. And so this idea of what I like to call for a short-term solution, the stop the bleeding, you got to address the problem in front of you right then and what needs to be done in that short-term solution. And then what is the long-term solution? How do we make sure this doesn't happen again? And so in that example with the customer with the wrong phone number on their mail piece, we were able to pause at the printer, make the change on the file, and get it off. And it had a timeline delay, but we were able to address it. And there were some, financial impacts on that. But then spent some time internally as a team. What happened in our checks in our quality assurance process that allowed that to happen? And so we implemented some changes to ensure that type of mistake doesn't happen again or is seriously mitigated. And so I like to think of it as the two, and they often work together. The stop the bleeding, in theory, you should be considering the long-term solution. Does it help you get to the long-term solution? But treating those as two distinct approaches that are equally important, but their approach will be different.
Yeah, and the urgency is probably different for each of them too. So let me speak back the steps. So step number 1, panic.
Yep.
Step number 2, ask, is this my responsibility? And I love that because as somebody who also I think is guilty of taking on things that really probably aren't mine to solve, I'm not sure it would have occurred to me to build that in. So I love that. Then you move to solutions in 2 tiers. First of all, stop the bleeding, and then long-term solutions. And then the last step is those lessons. Like, what did we learn? How are we going to change our processes, our systems, so that we don't have this again?
Yeah.
That's right.
That's
Is
exactly
that right?
Yep.
That's very good. And I've always loved your idea of stop the bleeding versus long-term solution. I use it in my client work. I use it a lot in the sales process when I'm talking to a client about how we might work together. What happens a lot is a client comes to us when they have a crisis of some kind. And they come to us because they want help with their crisis communications, or they need additional capacity, like they have a huge project coming up and they just need help. And as I talk to them, what I usually identify is really what they most need from us specifically is help with their brand position and their messaging. And that is going to be the most important thing that they need. But they have this other urgent need they need to sort of take care of first. And I use this language a lot where I say to them, we can do ABC things for you, which will stop the bleeding, which will get us to DEF, which is actually going to solve your problem. So all of that to say that I have really internalized this concept that you taught me, stop the bleeding versus long-term solutions, not only in my work, but also in my real life too, where I sometimes if I have a problem and I think to myself, okay, what's the stop the bleeding versus long term? Do you, Alana, use it in your personal life as well?
Oh, I do. I sure do. Uh, and as
Sounds like you have a story.
yes. Um, so something that shows up, I have a toddler, and we're still figuring out how we do life with a 2-year-old or nearly 2-year-old. And we're constantly having to create systems and processes in our own home. And not that long ago, it was not totally clear who was picking up my son from daycare. And my husband and I didn't have a great system for this. And it was getting to the point where it was like, someone needs to be there in 5 minutes because soon it will be $5 a minute. So rush, get him picked up. And that is the stop the bleeding. Like, I had to drop what I was doing, get over there, stop, could not have a full conversation about what changes in the future. Like, it was urgent and needed to happen. And it was disruptive to other things and is what needed to be done. So I see that as a stop the bleeding. And then the long-term solution was the conversation with my husband of like, oh, this isn't working. This is creating extra work for us. You know, this is the kind of thing that can happen if we don't figure out our system and process for this and have a better solution. So how do we identify and get clear on the roles and responsibilities around this? And then what happens when you're stuck in traffic? You know, like, what is our plan? And how do we make sure this doesn't happen again? Because it didn't feel good to anyone in our house. And so that's just a small example, but a very real example of how that has shown up just at home.
Yeah, for sure. I want to ask you about how clarity and systems and intentionality actually help to drive real world impact. But before we do that, let's take a quick ad break. The world can feel so overwhelming right now, and that it is impossible to make a difference. I wrote the Changemakers Toolkit for anyone who wants to build a kinder, more equitable world, but isn't sure where to start or how to keep going. The book weaves together insights from so many incredible changemakers and offers a roadmap for driving impact in today's world. The Changemakers Toolkit is out now, and you can buy it anywhere books are sold. Let's keep building the world as we believe it can be. Okay, so Alana, people often think that kindness is about personality, that you are a kind person or you are not a kind person. But I have had the esteemed honor of watching you create systems that actually make our organization and the organizations that we work with more caring and more equitable. How do you think about that connection?
So I think that First, the distinction between being kind and being nice, those are two different things. I learned that lesson from you, Catherine. Um, and the other piece is clear is kind. Clarity is kind. When people know what the expectations are of them, that is kind. When people are clear about their roles and responsibilities, that is kind. When we are intentional around building that clarity for people, it allows folks to do their best work. And so that's what I see that as, is when we work to create clarity on projects, in our relationships, in a position we're hiring for. If we are getting really clear, that is what is kind. And that then allows folks to do their best work. And I really think that when people are in the, it's the right person, right seat, right time, and they have the tools to be successful, that clarity, that they do that. And that's where the most impactful, lasting change comes from. Because we're solving the root problems, not just the surface symptoms. And so when people can really, again, do their best work, they're solving these bigger problems and making lasting change that's sustainable. I think that's the other piece, is that when we're just solving for symptoms or things like that, it's not making that real and lasting change. We've got to get to the root of it. And again, when people have the space to do their best work, that's when we'll solve the root issues.
Yeah. I think the distinction between solving for symptoms and solving the root is really important. And there's a parallel there between the stop the bleeding and the long-term solutions, that you have to treat symptoms. Symptoms are important. And when you do that, it creates the space for you to go to the root and build in those systems and correct for that systemic change that really actually creates that meaningful impact. And I think that it is so easy to lose sight of that in the everyday role of change making, because there's so much bleeding to stop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think about one of our client that I've had the chance to work with, Southwest Autism Research and Resource Center, and the work that they are doing in our region to expand autism services. This idea of meeting these critical needs of our community, wait times for just autism evaluations. I mean, we're talking today 2 years, I think I heard recently. And so they are doing this work to meet the needs, to close the gap on the evaluation time. And that has taken education, resources, tons of work to meet that need. And they have done that with some of the stop the bleeding approach, and how they addressed this 5 years ago to what they're moving towards today has evolved. But that then led them to a recent capital campaign to expand services statewide, because they know that having support in your community matters. So they are expanding physical offices, but also innovating virtual options and tools. And they're a leader in this space, and an organization I'm proud to have worked with, and an organization that has supported my family as well. And so it's pretty incredible when organizations lead on those things.
One of the things I admire the most about you is your incredible commitment to personal growth. You are someone who has very intentionally built a life you love, and I've watched you tackle some personal challenges and think about the person that you want to be. Where did that come from?
What a great question.
Is it natural? Was it born or made?
One of my personal values is responsibility. I've talked about this earlier, this idea that I'm responsible for creating a life that I love. And I think over the years, I learned that even the tension in my life, that I have the power to move through that, past that. I don't have to stay in relationships that feel hurtful anymore. Like, I have the power to move through those and choose something different for myself. So I think that belief really did come from my childhood, in this sense of like, I can do anything and be anything and do anything. I just need to do it. But the desire, I think, for personal growth came from pain, if I'm being honest. Like, stuff didn't feel great at my job anymore, some tough dating relationships, some friendship breakups, different things. And I realized that I just wanted to live a life that I absolutely loved. And so therapy helps a lot.
Sure
Helps a
does.
lot. And I would say for me personally, that's been one of the biggest contributors for myself. Just learning the tools and having the language to describe these feelings and these situations. Books and podcasts, love those. Friendships, man, female friendships in particular.
Oh my God, you're speaking my language.
Man, I am surrounded by incredible women in my life who love me, support me, challenge me, have difficult conversations with me. You want to talk about kindness? Man, the friends who will step into difficult conversations, who will notice when you're not operating or you're kind of doing something outside of your values, or, just who are paying attention and love you and will have those conversations. That has been incredibly valuable to me in my life and inspires me to continue learning and growing.
Well, and you mentioned your personal value of responsibility, and I know that your other core values, connection and care, are also really important to you. And I hear responsibility, care, and connection in everything you just described. That care for yourself and connection for yourself enables you to show up with care and connection with other people. And then that care and connection with other people reinforces your ability to extend that for yourself. And there's something really symbiotic and beautiful there. Do you find that to be true? And does that show up for you in your work as well?
Absolutely. When I think about my clients, when I have to send an email about anything that might feel sticky for them,
Yeah.
I am thinking, how is this going to feel for them? How can I position this and be clear and direct in my communication while also being mindful of how this will be received? What is the medium in which I'm communicating with them? Not everything should be in an email. Lots of things should be a phone call. And so just taking care in how things will feel for our staff and our clients and just anyone. A couple years ago at Javelina, we transitioned, as you recall, to a new project management system. And there were several people involved in this project. We took such great care in how this would work for all of the different services we offer, all of the different people on the team, the different working styles. Did it have enough flexibility for our staff to use it and it to be helpful and effective, not just another roadblock? And I think that's a really important piece, is like, you can create a step-by-step guide and SOP, but if you're making people's life harder with that and they don't see the benefit, people are not going to move through the change cycle the way you want them to. And you're going to feel a lot of resistance, not just along the way, but even on the other side of the implementation. And so taking a beat to really think about, who is this impacting? What type of care needs to be taken for that person, that group of people, that can make a whole lot of difference when you're implementing change in your organization.
I learned a lot about systems integration from that experience, and then from you of what it looks like when it's good. And it certainly looks the exact opposite of that. So, Alana, you have achieved so much for yourself, for your family, for your clients, for Javelina. for our wider community, which is why you have received this 40 under 40 recognition. But I know, because I know you, is that you are just getting started. So what does success look like for you? What is the impact that you are seeking to make?
I hope for everyone in the world to live a life that they love and that they have the space and the environment for them to thrive. And so that's what I hope that I do in whatever capacity that is, as a mom, as a colleague, as a partner with our clients. I hope that that's what folks feel and receive.
Well, I can attest that you certainly do that, and I cannot wait to see where you take it. Before we say goodbye, I have to ask you our speed round questions. So, Alana, what is a great book that has informed your change making?
The coaching habit, but this idea of just asking one more question. Just ask one more question. So, the coaching habit.
Who is one change maker that inspires you?
Michelle Obama.
Oh, great one.
Yeah, just so intentional in everything that she does. Yeah, just really inspired by her.
And what is a daily habit that keeps you grounded?
Bedtime with my son.
Oh. If you had to describe change making in one word, what would it be?
Care.
Love that. Alana, how can listeners best connect with you?
Yes, so listeners can best connect with me on LinkedIn at Alana Campbell Nehl, also on Javelina's website, javelina.co. I would love to hear from you. That's the best way to connect.
Awesome. Alana, thank you so much for this wonderful conversation, for sharing your wisdom with us, and congratulations again on the 40 under 40 recognition. It is very well deserved.
Thanks, Catherine. Great talking with you.